It's time for Auburn to add some receivers via the portal.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Mike G of the War Rapport hanging out with us. We'll talk about the quarterback matchup. There's some quarterback news that happened on Auburn's schedule. Two instances. I think both of them are very interesting for very different reasons. Who could be next for Auburn to add via the portal? But Mike G, it's time. First and foremost, it's time for Auburn to get some of these big-bodied and big-named receivers out of the transfer portal and onto this roster.
Yeah, you got to bolster the wide receiver room. Now, I know Cam Coleman returns. I know Perry Thompson is coming back. We all know that Malcolm Simmons is going to be a stud. And Bryce Cain is waiting in the wings, Zach,
Yes.
to pop up. But that can't be all you have. Right. And look, they went out and they got Keandre Lambert-Smith, and he ended up being a star. So, you know, I know Horatio Fields projects to be a guy, right? There's some other guys that they're looking at. The portal, you've reported that Eric Singleton is a guy that could be looked at, that they're in strong position for. I think he's a number 2 guy in the portal now that Mateer has entered.
Okay, that makes sense. That's fine.
Yeah, but we're booging, so we're just gonna say he's still number 1. He's still number 1 in the portal in my eyes. But look,
Mateer even really in the portal, like he's going to Oklahoma. Like, come on, like,
okay,
is he really in the portal? You know,
fair.
But yeah, fair. Horatio Fields, former Wake Forest wide receiver. We talked about him early in the process, and then it kind of fizzled out a little bit, and he's back. He's expected to announce today. A few different folks have reported that, and Auburn is certainly in the mix for this guy. And he's a little different than Eric Singleton. Eric Singleton can kind of do a lot of different things. Horatio Fields, much larger frame, 6'3", 205 is what it says on his roster at Wake Forest. And I mean, you can do a lot. You can do a lot with that frame that kind of screams outside wide receiver. And that's kind of, this kind of matches the, the stereotype, I guess, of a Hugh Freeze outside wide receiver, just these massive guys with a wide catch radius. Horatio Fields checks a lot of those boxes, Mike.
He does. He does check a lot of those boxes. This is a 400, just under a 500-yard guy last year, right?
463, 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, 39 receptions. Look, I'd expect if he comes to Auburn and plays significantly that would go up with as much as Auburn threw the ball. I think that with Jackson Arnold as your projected starter, even though Oklahoma ran him 150 times last year, I don't think he'll run that much at Auburn. I think that he's going to throw to these guys a lot more. And look, he's got a much better wide receiver room, I think, to work with at Auburn. And so if you're Auburn, you're trying to give him as many targets as you can. Injuries happen, and poor play happens, and you've got to be able to be deep. I think that Auburn fans are struggling with the idea that you can be really talented too deep at some of these positions. So look, I love this ad. I think that you have to go out
too deep in some of these positions. What do you mean by that?
Like you need to be too deep. Starter quality deep on the outside at both positions. Right.
I gotcha.
So yes, we had Keandre Lambert-Smith and Cam Coleman. Those guys pretty much stayed healthy all year. But behind them, who did you have on the outside, right? Well, Perry Thompson was waiting in the wings, and he's the presumed guy that's going to step up, one of the Freeze 4. I know that he wants to honor the commitments that he made to those guys when he brought them in, but they've got to get used to capable competition being in the room with them. Now, Perry Thompson was a name that we talked about possibly, looking at something else. So is he scared of the Horatio Fields deal? I don't think he is.
I haven't heard anything. I mean, have you heard anything from Perry? Like I was asked this on the radio yesterday. Like I haven't heard any chatter about Perry considering leaving. I don't think that's as much of a possibility as I don't know. I think it's like the Auburn fan base, we're almost expecting the other shoe to drop because we haven't really lost anybody. I know Auburn fans are upset about Walker White and more on him later, but I haven't heard like that Perry leaving, like there's a threat of that.
Yeah, it was based on in season, something we know happened in season. Auburn considered redshirting him, and they asked him, and he said no, that he did not want a redshirt, right? And so, like, but then it did not turn into more playing time for him. So, you know, there was a commitment made to Perry Thompson that he's next up. And you know, like I said, I think that they're going to try to rotate more guys at wide receiver. I think we might actually see more 10 personnel this year, Zach. I think it's a strong possibility with how Auburn is bolstering the offensive line. So there's an opportunity for all these guys to get more time at that position. If Hugh Freeze gets to his quarterback throwing the ball closer to 400 times a year, which is what his quarterbacks have done traditionally, there are going to be more opportunities here for guys like Horatio and Perry, I think, to play and have an impact.
Yeah, so Horatio Fields expected to announce at some point. I think it's early afternoon. So we'll see. The former Wake Forest receiver. Auburn is certainly a favorite there. Eric Singleton, a guy that we've talked about a ton, the top player in the portal, or number 2 player in the portal now, number 1 receiver. And this is a guy who's demanded a lot of attention. There's been several, posts that have gone viral about what he's asking for from an NIL point of view.
Oh my goodness.
Auburn has been very upfront and very clear of like they are going to pay competitively. And Mike, you have to. If you're Auburn, you have to, because you didn't win a whole lot of games last year. And so you've got to kind of add a little bit extra to the pot to make that more interesting and more enticing. You can take that and still believe in the future. Why not both? And I think they're having to pitch a little bit of that. It's like, look, we get it. We get it. We won 5 games last year, but it's going to get better. And we promise that you can believe in the future here. And folks are doing that clearly.
Yeah.
Is Auburn competitive on the NIL front too? 100%. But to act like Auburn's the only school offering these guys lots of money is crazy. And it's a talking point that's gotten way out of hand.
Yeah, I would say this. And I've said this before.
Okay.
If you're a player with options, the money is pretty even almost everywhere you have a shot to go.
Sure.
Right. Like, so it still comes down to where do I think they're going to utilize me the best? Because if I'm the number 1 player in the portal, everybody's offering about the same amount. There might be somebody willing to go a step above and beyond. But no, I will add this. A lot of the numbers that we're hearing, Zach, are overblown.
They are inflated.
Yeah, when you talk to players, they're not making anywhere near what the reported numbers are. So it doesn't mean that there aren't guys out there making ridiculous amounts of money. It's certainly happening, but almost always it's a lot less than people think. I sat with an Auburn player doing kind of a season download a couple days ago, and we talked about this. He told me what he made, and then he said that what he knew about what the guys that were coming in this portal class were making, and it just didn't touch the numbers that we're hearing publicly. So I think a lot of what you're hearing is this is what this guy's NIL valuation is. This is what his potential economic impact is. But what they're bringing home is something completely different. I think the numbers, I'm with you, are overblown.
Yeah, there's
Auburn
also
is not the only team spending.
And On3 is really the only group doing this, and somebody's got to do it. And I'm glad that they are. And it's still new, and I think this is going to change over time and get more accurate. But a lot of people are pulling it from that on your On3 profile as a player. Like they give you an evaluation or a valuation, and I mean, there's just not enough data for them to accurately do that. It's nothing against them. I'm glad somebody's doing it. I think they're doing a good job, but it is inflated still so far. Now, maybe what they're bringing in is like they're assuming, what that means from, the respective schools collective, as well as, potential brand deals with maybe, some national brands. If they get on a commercial or social media campaign or something, maybe it lumps all that in. But as far as what they're getting from the collective, this all seems high for the most part. And for folks that are saying this isn't sustainable, you're right. You're 100% correct. And that's why the rules are changing. Once the rev share stuff happens, this will all calm down. But right now, if you're Auburn or if you're any team that's trying to compete this upcoming season and put yourself in a competitive situation, you've got to pay the price of what seems to be an inflated market right now. But you got to know that it's going to go away and kind of regulate itself a little bit when rev share starts to become a thing in the not too distant
Yeah, let me add this. What
Go
you're
ahead.
seeing too in college football, Zach, is you're seeing a lot of we talked about this over at Locked On UCF. UCF is reorganizing their collective right now in anticipation of that. So a lot of
Yeah.
people are reorganizing right now in anticipation of the universities having more control over the money directly rather than going through the collective and having to play this game where it's like, oh, we're not really doing it. It's our collective doing it, but it's really us doing it. It seems like that's about to go away. It's a sham anyway. We know the universities are directly involved in negotiating these numbers. It's happening everywhere. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. The money is just a real part of it right now, and Auburn's adjusting well, I think.
Yeah, agreed. All right, where does Auburn sit now outside of wide receiver when they look into the portal? And I think they got a sneaky hire or a sneaky signing yesterday, Mike G. Let's jump into that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at the College Football Playoff. It's that time of year. The CFP is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the College Football Playoff begins December 21st, starting with the CFP kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern. Leading into our first matchup, SMU taking on Penn State. Then, of course, after that, Clemson takes on Texas at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the College Football Playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook. Is the best place to wager on all of your sports action. You can tackle the final few weeks of the NFL season, or make sure you're ready for the College Football Playoff and the rest of bowl season all over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers get about $5. You get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to bet on all of your sports action. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet hits, all over at FanDuel.com. Mike G of the War Rapport, also host of Locked On UCF. Auburn signs Dallas Walker IV, the former Western Kentucky defensive lineman. And this is a position group where I was kind of surprised it took them long enough to start getting some extra bodies, because they need guys. Sure, they've got young guys that I think are going to maybe play earlier than what was probably pitched elsewhere, which may have been why Auburn was able to get so many talented guys to sign in this upcoming class. But you look at the two classes that they've got. They lost TJ Lindsey, obviously, to the portal earlier this cycle. But all in all, they can go young here, but they still do need bodies just by the nature of it being, an SEC defensive line. You've got to rotate guys in and out.
Yeah. Look, depth is the name of the game in the portal. We know that Auburn is doing really well right now, Zach. And so when I saw Dallas's name, come through, I'm thinking, man, can DJ Durkin have any more weapons to play with than he already has? This guy's doing an incredible job right now. And so I love what they're doing on the defensive side of the ball. Again, defensive line, you've got some experience. You're having attrition that's happening on that defensive line. Jason Jones is done. He was a great friend of Locked On Auburn.
Yeah, great guy.
Incredible interviews that I saw you do with Jason. So you're losing some leadership, and you're bringing a guy like Dallas Walker, the fourth in. I love it. In my download with players after the season, again, I do this thing after the season where I sit down with players and we talk about how the season went.
I think it's great.
They talked so much about how great DJ Durkin's system is, how much they learned in it, and how much they felt like they developed in it. He was present. He was energetic. Defensive practice, they said, was organized on a level that they had not experienced before in high school or at the college level. And I think if you get a guy like Dallas Walker IV into that system, when you look at his measurables and what he can do, I think they can find a way to use this guy a lot this coming season. So I'm excited to see what Durkin and those guys are going to do with him.
Yeah, me too. Another guy to keep an eye out on, Matt Zenitz reports that Florida Edge transfer TJ Searcy is expected to visit Auburn. This is a guy, former 4-star with Florida, 34 tackles, 4 tackles for a loss, 2 sacks this past season. Florida really liked this guy. He seems like he's a little bit larger than Kieran Crawford, so probably an edge guy. I don't think he's quite big enough to be a traditional defensive end. But we talked about it as like, okay, it's a similar situation from last year where you had J-Mac coming back, but it's like, you probably need another guy. So they go out and get Kieran Crawford, and now you lose J-Mac due to eligibility and him going to the draft. So you've got Kieran. It's like, okay, who's the Robin to his Batman at this point? Like, who's that other guy? Is it Keldrick? And you just are expecting so much out of Keldrick that maybe you just kind of say, okay, maybe one of these younger edge guys steps up, or do you possibly bring in another one? I was in the camp of bringing in another one. And if it's TJ Searcy, oh my goodness, this would be a home run move for DJ Durkin.
Absolutely. Right. I think that Auburn projects to rush the quarterback even more next year than they did.
I hope so.
Year.
Give it to me.
It's going to be, I think they raised hell on offenses last year. During the Iron Bowl, it was funny. Every single time, like, they just kept turning up turnovers, and they created 4 before Auburn could turn the ball over once. So, when you look at Searcy, former top 250 guy, right? He was a consensus 4-star, I believe, coming out of high school. And I think that I love the competency that we're showing on defense with development. And, I've talked to some people actually close to Searcy, and I think that they like how he projects in DJ Durkin's system. So, again, great guy to take a look at here.
Yeah. The quarterback situation that Auburn will play against got significantly more interesting yesterday. That in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Mike G, can you imagine playing daily fantasy anywhere other than with our friends at Prize Picks?
I can't, because I do.
Yeah. It's so fun. It's so fun. So what is Prize Picks? Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions with a B of dollars in award winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win 1,000 times your cash, up to 1,000 times your cash. That's a real number, Mike G. That's a real number that we're talking about with Prize Picks. Run your game all season long with Prize Picks, America's daily #1 daily fantasy sports app. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Final few moments here as we wrap up to today's Locked On Auburn. So first things first, Auburn hosts Vanderbilt this year. They go to Vanderbilt. They hosted them last year, and so we're flipping locations of previous SEC opponents. Diego Pavia, in his lawsuit against the NCAA, he sued them saying he deserved one more year. He won it. It's going to be interesting what precedent that sets moving forward. But Auburn has to play Diego Pavia one more time. So obviously going to Nashville, still a game Auburn should win. Auburn should always beat Vanderbilt in football. But Diego Pavia has given Hugh Freeze trouble. You got to look at that game a little bit closer now.
Yeah, you do. Side note, I wonder what the under-over on Vanderbilt is going to be with him returning. Now, last year it was 2.5 games.
You got to think they added 2 or 3 games just with this decision.
Yeah, it was 2.5. I should have bet the whole 401k on Vanderbilt to win 3 games last year.
No kidding. Imagine? I mean, it felt like free money. I don't think anybody saw what they did coming fully, but goodness gracious.
Good God. Right. So, look, suddenly the SEC has become a quarterbacks league.
Sure.
Right? You remember when the Big 12 held that title? And it felt like, we're producing pro-style quarterbacks over here. That's the SEC now. And without dynamic quarterback play, it's really difficult to win. Everybody's in search of their next stud quarterback. Man, I think there are so many great storylines in the SEC developing for next season. It's going to be fantastic. So many good ones this year. But with Pavia coming back, I think that's another great college football story. Kind of wish he was out of eligibility. I'm sick of that guy.
I was kind of relieved. It's like, okay, cool. Going to Nashville. That's a road SEC game you feel much better about. Now all of a sudden it's like, no, that one's going to be competitive for sure. Just because, I mean, clearly he knows how to beat Hugh Freeze right now. The other quarterback situation from a matchup standpoint that got more interesting yesterday, former Auburn quarterback Walker White, who entered the portal, I guess earlier this week, picked up a prediction to land at Baylor, which of course Auburn opens their season at Baylor. I think that's pretty amazing from a storyline standpoint. Like, one, good for Walker. Hopefully he's very successful wherever he ends up. I think everybody really is pulling for Walker White. But goodness gracious, like if he starts in that game, that would be insane. That'd be
amazing.
Insane for him.
Well, first of all, there was a lot of hubbub on social media about him leaving to be closer to his mom, who is sick. Miss Amy's doing well. I talk to her often, and she's doing well with her cancer, which we love that.
Totally.
But this kind of kills that whole close to home narrative, right? Like,
yeah, it's from Arkansas for context.
Right. So, look, this would be one of the most amazing things I think that could ever happen to next year's schedule, is that he goes there and starts next year. That is just, I can't wait for that, actually. So
what an opportunity for both sides. Like, one for Walker to say, okay, let's go. You wanted to bring guys in over me? Let's roll.
Yeah, he's a competitive guy. I support his decision to leave.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, he's not doing it unless he thinks it's what's best for him, which, who are we to argue that? But the extra pressure it puts on Hugh Freeze and his coaching staff. I mean, can you imagine if they lose to Baylor and Walker White, your former quarterback, is on the other sideline? Like, that would be insane. That'd be insane. So
unreal.
Let us know y'all's thoughts on that down below. Mike G, how can people check out everything that you've got going on? It's a lot.
Check us out over on Locked On UCF. We're cooking over there. Look, lots of great hires happening. Scott Frost is back, and we're going to be covering every second of it. He hired his former QB that whooped Auburn in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, Mackenzie Milton, from 2017. He's back as QB coach. I've got an interview pending with him over on Locked On UCF, and we got some great things going on. Other than that, check us out over at the War Rapport, on every social media platform.
Gosh, that 2017 season seems like a lifetime ago.
But it
seems forever ago. It's like, man, it's like the last time we were like really good.
Should have been in the playoff.
So close. Carry on stays healthy. I think we are. Think Carlton got hurt in that game too. Was that our corner that year? Think so.
Well, yeah.
Oh well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh well. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Mike G, thank you for your time as always, my friend. And thank you for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Please like the video. Please subscribe, and we'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.